Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of Close to Broken. Today we are back at the Hustler once again. Oddly enough, I've been coming here quite a bit. Games have been okay, or good or great, honestly, from what I've been used to in LA for the most part as of late. And also, a more important thing to note that we have a meetup game coming up this Saturday. Be there or be a square. Giveaways, drinks, excitement, splashy activity for myself. Super excited to see you guys then. During the entire month of October, I'll be giving away everything that I make from YouTube ad revenue to somebody that deserves it. So, just to coincide with, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, more fun for us to do something that, helps out those in need. Either ways, I'm super excited to hop in. If you guys ever want to play with me, Splash Squats, link at the top of the description. The last couple weeks have been amazing. Either way, let's get into today's episode playing 5-5 1K max. Let's have some fun.
Let me let you guys know a little bit of fun facts. This session ends up being the longest session I think I played of this entire year. So buckle up because there's so much to go over. We're playing 5-5. $1,000 is the maximum to play. And in this very first hand, middle position makes it $20 to go. The button makes a call. I find myself in the big blind with 8-7 offsuit. Feels good enough to defend, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the flop comes out amazing. 8-7 3, 2 diamonds out there. There is a flush draw. This is what dreams are made of, I think. Top 2 pair multi-way. The action checks over to the button, who decides to take over the bet and lead by betting $25. Action on me. There's a ton of equity for a bunch of random hands, straight draws, flush draws, you name it. I can promise you it's on this board. I decided to raise here to $75. I can even go a little bit larger, honestly. Initial raiser ends up folding, and we're going off to a turn card that comes as 7 of spades. We now fill up here. The only annoying thing is that my hand just got a little too good, a little too fast. It's going to be really hard to get value, in my opinion, from any holding that maybe contains a flush draw, as I think they'd be a little more likely to fold here. But if I check to them, there's maybe some chance our opponent thinks we're full of shit. I decided to do something a little unorthodox and just decide to check it over to my opponent. He doesn't take the bait, though. He decides to check it back, and we're going off to a river card that comes a 9 of hearts. Alright, so that does bring a ton of straight draws, obviously. My opponent only has about $200 remaining. I decided to jam it all in here for $200, and he pretty quickly decides to fold. Unfortunate there, he would kind of murmur under his breath there that he had a diamond draw of some sort. Seems like if I was going to get any more money, it'd be on the turn, but either way, happy to take on the first pot. That's always a good sign. In this next hand, middle position decides to raise to $20. I'm in the cutoff. I decide to make the call with Jack 10 of diamonds. Big blind calls as well. We're going multi-way to a flop. That is very nice as it comes Jack 9 deuce, but monotone. All spades out there. Absolutely the wrong color, absolutely the wrong suit, but we do have top pair. And with the action checked over to the initial raiser, he decides to c-bet out here for $25. Actions on me. I decided to throw in the call here. I think doing anything else would be a little foolish. Big blind calls as well. We're going off to a turn card that is absolutely beautiful. Almost a chef's kiss as it comes out the 10 of clubs. I don't think I could have asked for a better turn card. We now make top. Of course, there are some opportunities for our opponent to have a hand like king, queen. Somebody can have already flopped a flush, but feels like I'm, doing all right here. With the action checked over to me, I realize that I got to go pretty big here. There's still a ton of hands that I can get value from. I'm making $110 to go. Only the big blind makes a call, which is a little worrisome, and even more so when the river card comes a king of spades. Well, it's going to be hard to be good here. It's 4 to a straight now. The unfortunate part is here, obviously I don't have a spade. With the action checked over to me, there's absolutely no value and no reason to turn my hand into a bluff or bet for value, so I check it back. Our opponent shows queen jack with a queen of spades, so got lucky there on the turn for sure, and got unlucky on the river. It's called the reverse. Domination, rotation. To quote a good friend of mine, Joe Stapleton. He's not a good friend, but I think he's awesome. Anyways, hopefully one day I'll get him to do commentary on one of my hands for the vlog. Stapes, if you're out there watching, this is for you. Things are coming along fairly swimmingly. Winning a little, losing a little. All in all, pretty fun session. And this very next hand, under the gun decides to limp here. I find myself in under the gun +1. I look down at ace-6 of spades here. I think this is a good hand to isolate with, so I go ahead and do that. I make it $30 to go. Middle position decides to call. The limper calls as well. And we're going off to a flop that comes ace, king, queen with 3 diamonds. With the action checked over to me, there's a couple ways we can go with this hand. This is a super dicey board. It's going to be really tough to get a ton of value. But I think my hand sets up as like a reasonable like 1 street of value hand. I mean, we do have top pair. So I decided to just play this pair pretty ABC. I throw out a c-bet of $40. Don't need to go that big. we're going to get called by a ton of inferior diamond draws that are just out there looking to get some diamonds. But at the end of the day, you want your fish to go fishing. Is that even a thing? I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. But luckily for us, both opponents end up making the fold. So a little worrisome. Like I said, I think that if both opponents just snap fold like that, there's just a ton of merit in just checking and letting somebody go crazy with it. That, and like I said, it's just hard to get value from a ton of worse hands. Either way, we're happy to take it. Let's move on. In this following hand, under the gun decides to limp. I find myself in the +1 position once again, and we look down at Big Slick. I decide to raise it up to $30, the big blind and the limper call, and we're going off to a flop that comes 5-4 deuce rainbow. With the action on me, I think it'd be foolish to c-bet here. This is a board that's going to be probably hitting my limping friend's range. Not me a great deal here. It's kind of hard to have the nut advantage when you're isolating and the board comes 5 high. Luckily ends up checking through. We're going to have to a beautiful turn card that comes with 3 of diamonds, bringing it back to our flush draw. With the action checked over to me again, I think at this point checking to have our opponents induce, do a little funny business, I think here on the river or on the turn makes sense to me. It ends up checking through once again, and we're going to a river card that comes a deuce of diamonds. Pairing the board here, bringing that backdoor flush draw in. With the action checked over to me, I do something funky and throw out a little blocker bet of $10. Kind of weird, I know, but with the action folding back to the big blind, he ends up doing something really goofy here. He decides to raise to $60. Again, we didn't do all this to fold, right? So let's throw in the call. We flick in the call.
I want to get veneers.
Go to CDMX. Go to Mexico City.
I was just in Mexico City about a month ago. It was fucking awesome. I want to go back. I was only there a few days.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah, Mexico City's badass.
Best place I've ever been.
So all in good fun there. Happy to take down another pot. Things are going fairly well for us in the initial part of the session. Hoping to continue the winning ways as we get deep into the night. Showing a little bit of resilience here early on. The table's a lot of fun, and I feel like everybody's swimming in this beautiful sea, but I'm not. I just haven't had a ton of cards to play with. Low Jack decides to make it $15 here. The hijack calls. The action's now on me in the cutoff, and I look down at pocket nines here. I wouldn't usually do this, but in a game that's just as loose as it is, not a bad idea to 3-bet here. I make it $60 to go. Only the low jack makes the call, and we're going off to a flop that comes ace 6-7 with 2 diamonds. With the action checked over to me, I think c-betting my entire range makes sense on this board texture. I decided to throw out a bet of $45. Our opponent ends up making the call, and we're going off to a turn card that comes in 10 of diamonds. All right, not that bad here, as we do pick up a little bit of equity here. The only frustrating part is our opponent decides to donk lead out for $60. Frustrating for many different cases, most of them being that I just don't see any profitable way I can continue on with this hand. Even if I am good and my opponent is just in the mood to bluff, it's going to be really tough to call any river bet. The frustrating thing is that if maybe the turn was like a 10 of clubs, I'd be a little more likely to throw out a little bit of a bluff here because, again, I double blocked the nut straight, but that doesn't help a great deal when there's already a flush on board. Either way, I throw my hand into the muck, showing a little bit of poise, I guess I could say, and not blasting it off here, but either way, let's move on to the next hand. In this following hand, there are three limps, and it gets over to the small blind, who also limps, and the big blind also limps, and the action's on me. There's like 50 billion people in this pot already, and I look down at pocket sixes. I don't know, honestly, if I should be raising this from the straddle, and I'm very open to comments in the comment section. In a game like this, $10 straddles, a bunch of dead money. Do we like raising here? Very interested to know. In game, I decided to just check my option, and the flop comes pretty juicy as it comes ace 6-5 with 2 diamonds. There is a ton of equity on this board. Straights, flushes, everything is out there. The action ended up checking through on this flop. The turn card comes a deuce of clubs. Sure, 3-4 is now completed, but our small blind opponent leads out for $10. All right, that's pretty interesting. With the action now on me, there's just way too much money in the middle for me to just be doing some funny stuff and just calling. Too much equity out there, not enough money in the pot. I raised to $75, and only the big blind makes the call. Going off to river, probably having to fade a ton of outs, and the river card comes a 9 of hearts. All right, sure, 7-8 now gets there, but again, we can't be too scared, especially when our opponent checks to us. We have a clear value bet. Our opponent only has about $200 remaining. It looks like I've got to get all of that. I decided to jam all in here for about $200, and our opponent pretty quickly folds king 4 of diamonds face up. If we were going to get any more money, it would be on the turn, but it feels like we got the absolute maximum. Either way, looking to progress along. I've been at this table for quite a few hours, and I think I'm starting to get a handle of the table dynamics. Things have been going, like I said, kind of up and down. There's been a lot of like really not exciting pots to go over. But one thing that, like I said, is really prevalent here is that people are just really loose pre-flop. And that doesn't mean that they're playing way out of line post-flop. Even with their super loose ranges pre-flop, they're playing fairly snug and face-up post. So what I've had to come to realize is that if we're going to bring the hammer down, we got to bring it down massive, or people are just not in the mood to fold top pair at all. This next hand under the gun makes it $15 to go. The button decides to call. The small blind calls, and the action's on me in the big blind, and we look down at a perfect squeeze hand, ace queen offsuit. The perfect price for me seems like $100, so I decide to do that. Only the initial raiser calls, who's just been super limp call and raise call happy today. We're going off to a flop that comes king, jack, deuce with 2 hearts out there. With the action on me, again, we can go with either option here, and betting small seems like a good idea. Betting a little bit bigger, like 60%, also seems like a good idea. I decided to go for the bigger sizing here. Not, you know, a bad idea in my opinion. I decided to go for a $120 C-bet, looking to get my opponent off a bunch of random middling pairs, as well as probably get him to fold inferior ace highs. Our opponent ends up deciding to fold, so easy does it. Feels like I'm having to get these hands out rapid fire mode. In this following hand here, under the gun makes it $20, the low jack, the high jack, and myself decide to make the call. Wait, hit the small blind and the big blind call as well. We're going way too many ways to a flop that comes 7 deuce deuce. Okay, well 7 deuce feels like the nuts here, right? Interestingly enough, the initial raiser decides to c-bet for $50. And the reason it's interesting is that this is kind of strong. There's like 6 players in this hand, and I decide to just float here. I guess not a float. I do have a pair, and we're going off to a turn card that comes as 7 of hearts. This introduces the second flush draw. Everyone else is out of the hand. We're heads up with the initial raiser, and he decides to throw out a massive bet of $250. In my opinion, this raise is just super weak, and for a lot of reasons. The only trouble is my hand's honestly not that good either. I mean, I don't think I can get counterfeited here in any possible way, but that's not really what I'm all that worried about. Can my opponent ever be value betting or bluffing a hand as like aces, or will they be bluffing with the hand like, I don't know, 8s or 9s? It's really hard to tell, but again, I just don't think a solid, player is probably betting this hand ever. So all that being said, I got to go with my live read, and the player just feels super weak and full of junk, I guess you could say. I make this sticky call, and we're going off to a river card that comes as 7 of diamonds. At this point, my opponent just tosses out 3 stacks of yellow, which should be 300, but it ends up being a little short as it's 285. A lot going through my head, and mostly that live read that I'm getting. My opponent is fronting. What I mean by fronting is this guy is pretending to have much more than he has. I think he has a very shitty hand, and the only trouble is my hand is just even more shitty maybe. There's a boat on board. People aren't very likely to bluff here, but with the live tell that I'm picking up on, my opponent just feels super weak. After a little bit of tanking, I decide to make the call here. All the draws miss. I feel like it can't be that bad until my opponent decides to show pocket 6s. What the... What's going on? Well, he got max value, and as much as I want to poke fun here, you can't discount that. But was he bluffing? Was he value? What the hell? I don't even... I'm going to go on a limb here and say that our opponent was absolutely bluffing here. And yeah, that's the story I'm going to stick with. I'm really happy with my live read. It's unfortunate when you pick up a live read, it's dead on, you're right, but you can't even beat his bluffs. Darn it. Things are getting pretty spicy here, especially when early position decides to limp, as per usual. And here I find myself looking to isolate with king-queen offsuit. The limper ends up making the call. The button ends up making the call. And we're going off 3 ways to a flop that comes 9-7 deuce rainbow. With the action on the initial limper, he decides to throw out a little donk lead for $20. With the action on me, although I don't have nut advantage every time, I do have the nuts advantage, which is pocket 9s here. I don't think I'd have many very 7s or deuces here, but I do think I'm going to be the most frequent to have pocket 9s. I decided to raise here to $75, taking a book out of Robbie Lou's book of playing the player, playing the man, and not the hand. That doesn't work when the button decides to cold call here and the limper ends up folding. With the action going off to a turn card, it comes a 10 of clubs here. It does bring a backdoor flush draw. We do in fact hold a club here, which is pretty important, as if a club comes off the river, I think I can pretty credibly represent that. Either way, with the action on me, I decided to throw out a bet once again for $110, and our villain decides to make the call. At this point, I was putting my opponent on a drawing hand like maybe 10-8, type holding. It does improve to a top pair, but I think on specific runouts, I think I can get him to fold. On the river,